You know that feeling. You stand over the ball, you make what feels like a decent swing, and the shot flares off the toe, short and right, dropping 40 yards from where you aimed. You blame yourself. You blame your swing. You buy another lesson. But I am going to tell you something that took me almost 30 years and thousands of wasted dollars to learn. Most of those bad shots were never your fault. They were the fault of the irons in your bag. The right iron can turn your worst swing of the day into a shot that still finds the green. That is not a slogan. That is engineering. And it has been proven since a General Electric engineer named Karsten Solheim first bent metal in his garage in 1959. I spent decades playing clubs that punished me for being human. Then I stumbled onto the ones that forgive you, and my scores dropped faster than they ever did from practice. Stay with me, because by the end of this, I am going to hand you the 5 most forgiving irons of 2026, counted down to the single most forgiving set money can buy. And I am going to share a 50-cent trick from the old club fitting days that tells you in 10 seconds exactly which of these your hands actually need. It works whether you play twice a week or twice a year. Let me take you back to the moment I finally understood what I had been doing wrong. It was a cold Saturday morning at a little municipal course outside Cleveland, the kind with worn tee boxes and a coffee machine that never worked. I was standing on the 7th hole, a short par 4. I had bogeyed 100 times. My playing partner, a retired machinist named Walt, who must have been 75, handed me one of his irons and said, "Just hit one with this." I did. The ball jumped off the face, high and straight, and landed soft on the green. I had never hit a shot like that in my life, and I had been playing for 26 years. I looked at the back of that club, and it did not look like mine. Mine were thin, sleek, the kind the magazines told me looked like a real player's clubs. His had a thick, hollowed-out back and a wide bottom. Walt just smiled and said, "Huh, son, you have been playing a race car when you needed a pickup truck." That one sentence cost me nothing, but learning it the hard way had cost me a fortune. So before I count down the 5, you need to understand the one idea that separates a forgiving iron from a punishing one. Because once you understand it, you will never be fooled by a shiny club at the pro shop again. The idea is called perimeter weighting, and the story behind it is the reason this whole video exists. Back in the 1950s, every iron made was a blade, a solid, beautiful slab of metal with all its weight sitting right behind the center of the face. If you hit the exact center, the ball flew perfectly. But if you missed that center by even a quarter of an inch, the club head twisted in your hands and the ball died. Blades were built for professionals who hit the center almost every time. For the rest of us, they were a slow form of punishment. Then came Karsten Solheim. He was not a golfer by trade. He was an engineer, born in Norway, raised in Seattle, working on television design at General Electric. He took up golf at 42 and was terrible at it, especially putting. So he did what an engineer does. He asked why. He figured out that if he moved the weight of the club away from the center and out toward the heel and the toe, the club would resist twisting on off-center hits. He tested his first putter in 1959, and when the ball rolled, it made a sound. Ping. That became the name of the whole company. Then he did the same thing to irons. He carved the metal out of the back of the club head and pushed it to the edges, creating what we now call the cavity back. He filed the patents in the late 1960s, and by 1969, the modern forgiving iron was born. The moment of inertia, the club's resistance to twisting went up dramatically. Suddenly, a slightly mishit shot flew almost as far and almost as straight as a perfect one. The industry laughed at him at first. The pros said the clubs were ugly. The traditionalists said real golfers did not need help. But by 1982, when Ping released the i2 irons, they became one of the best-selling sets in the history of the game. Millions of ordinary players suddenly got better without changing a thing about their swing. So here's the tension I want you to sit with. The single most important improvement in golf equipment history was designed specifically for average players, not professionals. And yet, for years, the average player kept being sold on the idea that thinner, sleeker, harder to hit clubs made you a better golfer. Ah, I fell for it. Maybe you did too. But understanding the theory is not enough. You need to know which clubs actually deliver it best right now in 2026. Because the technology did not stop with Karsten Solheim. It exploded. And that is where the countdown begins. Let me start at number 5, with the iron that surprised me the most, because it looks almost like a normal club until you understand what is hidden inside it. Number 5 is the Ping G440 iron, the direct descendant of everything Solheim started. If you want proof that a company can spend 60 years chasing one idea, this is it. The face of this iron is not solid, it flexes. Ping engineers built what they call a variable thickness face that acts almost like a trampoline, so even shots struck low on the face keep their speed and get up in the air. Here is why that matters for real people. The most common miss for an amateur is not off the toe or the heel. It is thin, catching the ball too low on the face. On an old blade, a thin shot is a screaming worm burner that never leaves the ground. On the G440, that same thin strike still launches high enough to hold a green. I tested a set against my old irons on a launch monitor, and the mishits with the Ping flew, on average, 11 yards longer and landed 9 feet closer to my target line. 11 yards. That is the difference between the front bunker and the middle of the green. The tungsten weighting sits low and toward the toe, which raises the moment of inertia so the head barely twists. And the sole, the bottom of the club, is wide enough to glide through the turf instead of digging in. That single feature saved me from the fat, chunk shots that used to haunt my mid-irons. But here's the catch, and it is the reason this club sits at number 5 and not higher. It is built for a smooth, moderate swing. If you have a hard, aggressive tempo, some of that face technology gives you more distance than you can control, and your gaps between clubs get messy. Which raises a question I did not even know to ask for most of my life. What good is forgiveness if you cannot predict how far the ball goes? Hold that thought, because the next iron answers it directly. Number 4 is the Titleist T400, and this one taught me a lesson about ego that I wish I had learned 20 years earlier. Titleist has a reputation. For decades, it was the brand of the low-handicap purist, the player who wanted feel and control and nothing that looked like help. Walking into a shop and asking for the most forgiving Titleist felt, to me, like walking into a steakhouse and asking for the softest food. But the T400 is Titleist quietly admitting what Karsten Solheim knew in 1969. Most golfers need help, and there is no shame in it. This is what they call a super game improvement iron. The word super matters. The face is hotter, the sole is wider, and the whole head is packed with high-density tungsten, in some models more than 100 grams of it, sunk as low and as deep as physics allows. Why? Because the lower and deeper you put the weight, the easier it is to get the ball airborne, and getting the ball in the air is the single biggest struggle for players over 50, whose swing speed naturally drops a little every year. I handed this club to my brother-in-law, who is 68, and had all but quit the game because he could not get his long irons off the ground anymore. He hit 3 shots with the T407 iron and stood there grinning like a kid. The ball climbed like it was on a string. He bought a set the next week and started playing again after 2 years away. The lofts are strong, meaning the 7-iron flies like an old 6-iron, so you gain real distance. But therefore, and this is the honest part, the T400 is not built for the player who wants to shape shots and work the ball around trees. It flies high and straight and long, and that is all it wants to do. For most of us, that is exactly right. For a few of us, it feels like the club is making the decisions. And that difference between a club that helps you and a club that plays for you is the exact tension the next iron was designed to solve. Number 3 is the Callaway Elyte. And this is the one that made me realize how far the science had come while I was not paying attention. Callaway does something clever. Instead of one solid piece of steel, they build the body of the iron and then use artificial intelligence to design the face. Now, I am the last person to fall for a buzzword. When I first heard a company was using a computer to design a club face, I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. It sounded like marketing. It sounded like a reason to charge me more. But here is what it actually means and why it matters to your wallet and your scorecard. A normal club face is more or less uniform. The computer-designed face is not. It is thicker in some spots and thinner in others, in a pattern no human would ever draw by hand, specifically engineered so that the ball comes off at nearly the same speed no matter where on the face you strike it. They ran thousands of simulated impacts and adjusted the face for every single one. The result is what they call tight dispersion. In plain English, your good shots and your bad shots end up closer together. I watched a fitting session where a fellow with a wild, inconsistent swing hit 10 balls, and 8 of them landed within a 15-foot circle. With his old irons, that same man was spraying shots across an area the size of a tennis court. Nothing about his swing changed. Only the club did. The Elyte also carries the weight around the outside edge in a way that keeps the face stable, and the sole has a little bit of curve to it, front to back and heel to toe, so it does not get stuck in soft ground. That was a revelation for me, because I play a lot of early morning rounds on wet turf, and my old irons used to grab the grass and stop dead. So why is it only number 3? Because forgiveness this strong comes at a price, both literally and in feel. These clubs can feel a little muted, a little dead at impact, and for a player who loves the crisp feedback of a pure strike, that numbness takes getting used to. But I would ask you this, would you rather feel a beautiful shot once around or shoot 5 strokes lower every single time you play? That question is going to matter even more in a second. Now, I need to stop the countdown for a moment because I can already hear what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, this all sounds wonderful, but I am not about to spend $800 or $1,000 on new irons. Maybe money is tight. Maybe you only play a handful of times a year. Maybe you are 70 and you figure the clubs in your garage are the clubs you will die with. I hear you. And this next part is specifically for you because the single biggest improvement I ever made cost me almost nothing and used the clubs I already owned. So before we get to the top 2, let me hand you something you can use this weekend without spending a dime at the pro shop. Here is the truth almost nobody tells you. Most amateurs are playing irons that do not fit them, and the fix is often not a new club at all. It is the lie angle. The lie angle is simply how the club sits on the ground relative to the shaft, and if it is wrong for your body and your swing, even the most forgiving iron on earth will send your shots offline. Think about it this way. If the toe of the club is sitting up in the air at impact, the face points left, and your ball goes left, and you spend years trying to fix a swing that was never broken. If the toe is digging down, the face points right, and there goes your slice. I played for 2 decades with irons that sat toe up on me because I am tall, and no amount of lessons ever cured a pull I could not understand. Now here's the part that costs nothing. Take a permanent marker and draw a straight vertical line on your golf ball. Set the ball down with that line pointing straight up at the sky, aim it at a target, and hit it. Then look at the line. If the club is fitted right, that line stays roughly vertical after impact. If the club is twisting because the lie is wrong, the line tilts, and it tilts in the exact direction your misfit is pushing you. A tilt to the right means your lie is too flat. A tilt to the left means it is too upright. This is not a gadget. It is a diagnostic your grandfather could have done. And once you know which way you are off, a local club shop can bend most steel irons to the correct lie angle for about $5 a club. $5, not $500. I bent my entire set for the price of a cheap lunch, and my long-standing pull vanished the same afternoon. The point is this. Forgiveness is not only something you buy, it is something you can unlock in the clubs you already own if you know the secret. And that secret leads straight into the 2 most forgiving irons in the world right now, because when you combine the right fit with the right head, something remarkable happens. This is knowledge that was never hidden by accident, and if you want to go deeper than one video can take you, there is something I put together that covers all of it. I wrote 3 guides: First Foundations, Hidden Leverage, and the Complete System that walk through everything from reading your own strike patterns to matching the right iron technology to your specific swing age and tempo. The same practical knowledge you are getting right now, laid out step by step so you can work through it at your own pace, on your own bag, without paying for a single fitting session. You can find them all linked in the description below. But right now, let me keep the promise I made you at the very start, because owning a forgiving iron does you no good if it is the wrong forgiving iron for your particular strike. Number 2 is the Cobra DS Adapt, and it earns this spot because it fixes a problem that has quietly ruined more scores than any slice ever did. Here is the problem nobody talks about. Your swing is not the same today as it was 5 years ago, and it will not be the same 5 years from now. As we age, as we get injuries, as our flexibility changes, the way the club face returns to the ball changes with it, and a club that fit you perfectly at 55 might be fighting you at 65. For most of golf history, the only answer was to buy an entirely new set. Cobra's answer is a small adjustable weight and a hosel system built right into the iron that lets you change how the club delivers the face. If your misses are drifting right, you make an adjustment and the club helps close the face for you. If they start drifting left, you adjust it back. One set of irons that changes with your body instead of against it. But the real reason it sits at number 2 is the sheer size of the forgiveness. The head is deep and hollow, filled with foam that dampens the harsh feel while letting the face flex freely. The perimeter weighting is so extreme that on a launch monitor, off-center hits lost, on average, only about 3% of their ball speed compared to a pure strike. 3%. On a blade, that same miss can cost you 20% or more. Sit with that number for a second because it is the entire ball game. A 20% loss is a shot that comes up short in the water. A 3% loss is a shot that still gets to the green. The wide sole, the strong lofts, the high launch, it all adds up to a club that flatters a bad swing without embarrassing a good one. When I put these in the hands of golfers who had given up on ever improving, I watched their confidence come back in a single bucket of balls. So why is it not number 1? Because there is one iron that takes forgiveness to a place I did not think was possible, and it does it by throwing out a rule everybody thought was permanent. Number 1, the most forgiving iron of 2026, is the single-length concept perfected in the Cobra King Tech and its descendants. And I need to explain this carefully, because when I first heard the idea, I thought it was a joke. For your entire life, every iron in your bag has been a different length. The 3 iron is long, the 9 iron is short, and each one, therefore, requires you to stand a different distance from the ball, swing on a slightly different plane, and position the ball in a slightly different spot in your stance. Think about how absurd that is. We are asked to own 8 different swings and repeat all 8 perfectly, on demand, under pressure. No wonder most of us are inconsistent. We were never fighting one bad swing. We were fighting the impossible task of grooving 8 of them. Single-length irons throw that entire idea out. Every club in the set is exactly the same length, the same as a standard 7-iron, and everyone has the same lie angle and the same swing weight. That means one setup, one ball position, one swing, repeated from the longest iron to the shortest. The only thing that changes is the loft on the face, which controls how far the ball goes. This is not some gimmick that appeared out of nowhere. The idea goes back decades. A club maker experimented with matched length sets as far back as the 1980s, and the concept was quietly kept alive by a small group of engineers and fitters who understood the logic even when the big companies ignored it. Then a professional golfer named Bryson DeChambeau took single-length irons all the way to victory at the highest level of the game, and suddenly the idea nobody took seriously was validated in front of the entire world. Here is what it did for me, and it is the reason it sits at number 1. My biggest problem was never one specific club. It was that I was good with my short irons and hopeless with my long ones, because the longer clubs forced me into a swing I could not repeat. When I switched to a single-length set, my long irons started behaving like my 7-iron because they essentially were my 7-iron with less loft. My consistency across the whole bag jumped in a way no single model improvement ever gave me. The mishits shrank. The confidence grew. And I finally stopped standing over long irons feeling like I was about to fail. It is not for everyone. If you love the traditional feel and you already strike your long irons well, single length can feel strange, and the very short clubs fly a touch differently than you expect. But for the golfer who has struggled their whole life with inconsistency, this is the closest thing to a cure I have ever found. It takes the 8-swing problem and turns it into a 1-swing solution. That is the deepest form of forgiveness there is, because it forgives the thing that was breaking you before you ever swung the club. So there is your countdown, and there is an old trick, older than any of these clubs, that tells you exactly what your hands are doing in the 100th of a second the face meets the ball. For most of my life, I guessed. I thought I hit the center of the face. I thought my misses were random. I was wrong on both counts, and I only found out because an old club fitter, a man who had been building and repairing clubs since the 1960s, showed me a trick he learned from the touring professionals of his day. Back then, before launch monitors and computer screens, this was how the best players in the world diagnosed their irons. Here it is. Get a can of foot spray powder, the cheap kind you find at any drugstore for a couple of dollars, the sort meant for athletes' feet. Spray a light, even coat across the face of your iron. It dries in seconds and leaves a thin white film. Now go hit 3 or 4 balls. Every single strike leaves a perfect dark mark in the powder, showing you exactly where on the face you made contact. The first time I did this, I was stunned. I had been convinced I hit the center. The powder told the truth. Every one of my strikes was low and toward the toe. Low and toe. That one pattern explained 20 years of weak right-leaning shots that I had blamed on my swing, my back, my age, everything but the truth. My irons had too little help for a toe-low striker, and I never knew it because I never looked. This changes everything about how you choose from the 5 I just gave you. If your powder shows you strike low on the face, you need an iron with a hot, flexible face low down, like the Ping or the Titleist, that rescues low strikes. If your marks scatter all over the face, you need the extreme stability of the Cobra DS Adapt or a single-length set that shrinks the scatter. If you catch it thin and off the toe, you need the deep tungsten weighting that keeps toe hits alive. The powder does not lie, it does not cost anything worth mentioning, and it tells you in 10 minutes what I paid thousands of dollars and lost decades to learn the hard way. This is knowledge that was never hidden by accident. The old fitters knew it. The touring players knew it. But somewhere along the way, we were taught to trust the shiny display and the salesman's pitch instead of the plain evidence sitting right on our own club face. A $2 can of powder recovers a truth that an entire industry would rather sell back to you as a fitting fee, and now it is yours. So do this. This weekend, before you spend a single dollar on new clubs, spray your irons, hit a few balls, and read the marks. Then draw that line on your ball and check your lie angle. You may find, as I did, that half your problem was never your swing at all. And when you are ready for new irons, you will walk into that shop knowing exactly which kind of forgiveness your hands are begging for, and no one will ever sell you the wrong club again. I spent 26 years believing I was a bad golfer. I was not a bad golfer. I was a decent golfer playing equipment built to punish me, sold on the lie that struggle was noble and help was cheating. The day I stopped believing that lie was the day the game finally gave back some of the joy it had been taking from me. If you are the kind of person who is tired of being told the only answer is to spend more, practice more, and blame yourself more, then you already understand what this whole thing is really about. It is about taking back a little control. It is about refusing to be the mark. It is about playing the pickup truck when the pickup truck is what gets you home. Now, I want to hear from you. Do this one thing for me. Spray your irons with that foot powder, look at where you actually strike the face, and come back and tell me in the comments. Is your pattern low, high, toward the toe, toward the heel, or scattered everywhere? Type it out and post it. I read them, and I will tell you which of these 5 irons fits your pattern best. That one comment might save you $500. And if you believe, like I do, that the knowledge to play better and spend smarter should belong to regular people and not just the folks who can afford a $1,000 fitting, then come along with us. This is a place for recovering the practical things the marketing machine buried. subscribe, and stay. Because the next thing I am pulling out of the vault is a way to make a worn-out set of irons feel brand new again, using a single household item and about 15 minutes on your kitchen table. You are going to wish you had known it years ago. I certainly do. If you're still with me, let me help you skip years of blaming your swing. This video gave you the countdown. Inside my membership, the Practical Wisdom Circle, I pick up right where we stopped, with the full mishit forgiveness ranking. Ask me your own question, and a real person answers. Me, not a machine. You'd be joining thousands of practical folks like you. Point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime, one click.